I believe that just because a business might be sitting on a monolithic or legacy or some tech stack that the business is not being served well by, it doesn't mean that you still can't severely mess up tech stack of shiny new tools.
Welcome to another episode of the e-commerce toolbox expert's perspective. Today, we have ourselves the Canadian legend. We got ourselves Tovi. So really excited. He's coming at us from Uncork Solutions, which we'll get into, but has a rich experience from Harry Rosen to Apply Digital and other brands in the middle. So welcome, Tovi.
Thank you for having me, Caitlin.
Awesome. I always like to start off by learning a bit more about the person I'm interviewing's journey. So maybe talk to us a bit about, you spent almost 8 years at Harry Rosen. You then moved into a global role at Apply Digital before kicking off your own consultancy. So maybe talk us through your career journey, where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Thank you. So my story actually begins before Harry Rosen, but that was my first big time role. I did spend 8 years starting an e-commerce channel for historically in-store retailer. And that's really where I kind of cut my teeth with code and client experience and shipping and fulfillment and inventory and all that stuff, really getting a good understanding of all the different facets of what it means to run an e-com business. But Harry Rosen was sort of like my first call up to the big leagues, if you will. My time there was really split half on the monolithic, like the old Harry Rosen, and then half on the new digital first Harry Rosen. So that transition was very interesting because it was within the same business, very much with the same cast of characters, and seeing what effect technology choices can have on a business, like the people running the business and the customer experience. So I'm very grateful for that. And that's kind of where I guess people started to recognize who I am, within the e-commerce community. So I'm also grateful for that. When I left Harry Rosen, I really thought that I'd hit a bit of an inflection point. And so at that time, I was very fortunate to get a tap on the shoulder from Apply, just kind of out of nowhere. They're like, hey, we have this position we're trying to fill. Would you be interested? And I'm not kidding. When I saw that job description, I was like, it's although this was written for me. So it was really hard to turn that down as far as being able to apply my experience from Harry Rosen, that transformation experience, into other business contexts. So I was very attracted to that fast learning experience where I could apply my experience in different businesses, but in turn, I could get exposure to different businesses, which meant I would just become better at my craft. And since the end of February, I left Apply Digital. And to be perfectly honest, I was actually first going to pursue leadership role back on the brand side, on the client side. But this is actually a tough market. It has been for me. And I've been very fortunate that as I've been just talking to people in my network saying hey, where's the action? People would say, well, since you're actually looking for work right now, could you do this for me? Could you help me with this? And so unintentionally, I've kind of stumbled into this path, and I'm very thankful that it's getting traction pretty quickly. And I've been able to really sink my teeth into, at least right now, one really chunky project, which I want to see come through. So I'm very excited for the opportunity.
Very cool. And I remember, obviously you joined Harry Rosen in a very junior position. You left leading and directing the product management team. Obviously, you saw the transition from the monolithic solution to the composable and really launching a website that won a ton of MACH awards and is really well known in the community. So maybe talk to us a bit about what was the status of the ecom platform when you joined Harry Rosen. Talk to us a bit about the vision that you put forward and actually seeing that to completion and execution.
Sure. When I came in, Harry Rosen had been sitting on the same monolithic major e-commerce platform. I'm trying to protect the names of the innocent, but it was really complex in a good way. You were given the illusion that you could do almost anything with it. The trouble was, it was highly inoperable with anything new or anything outside of its closed wall ecosystem. And complicating that was there was just years and years and years of spaghetti code built on top of spaghetti code because of a rotating door of systems integrators that had touched that code base. So it was very fragile. And from an organizational friction perspective, ecom was very much seen as this adjunct function that nobody really took seriously because in terms of the volume of sales, there was only a small portion of it coming from ecom and the rest was coming from the in-store channel. And also there was this almost like laughing stock of the business would throw these requirements over the fence into IT land and say like, can you do this? And there was always excuses of either why we couldn't or why we had to deliver something in like a piecemeal way or why we could only do something much later than the business actually wanted it done. So there was this real like friction point between business and IT about what the ecom function could do. Now, it's really weird to say that I'm grateful for COVID, but COVID did present almost like a once in a lifetime opportunity to make a really big swing when under normal circumstances that probably never would have flown. So the business had been trying to get another version upgrade on this monolith that we were on. And then the executive basically laughed it out of the room. They're like, come on, really? Like, we've been down this road before. We've done these major upgrades. We'll throw a bunch of money at it and only get like a fraction of the ROI that we actually expected and that you promised. So when we did that the last time, that was like mid 2019, we thought, okay, well, might there be another way? And serendipitously, my executive sponsor at the time, Ian Rosen, sent me this link kind of out of nowhere. I think he got it from someone smarter than me. And it was a website, just an article explaining this is how monolithic architecture looks like. But this is how microservices, API first architectures look like. And the whole like division of responsibilities and the clear demarcation between them. It was such a light bulb moment. It was like, oh my God, this is our get out of jail free card. This is the way. And so we completely repackaged and pivoted the proposal, got buy-in, signed all the contracts, and then the world shut down. So we were already like just on the course of heading down that like from monolith to something else. And only later did we realize like we'd kind of done something special for the business.
Very, very cool. And maybe talk me through building the business case, building the ROI to secure the funding to do that, because these projects typically take funding and everyone, especially in retail, always wants to know how is this going to impact a P&L. So like, how are you able to forecast like an increase in sales? Was it a decrease in costs? Like, how did you like pitch it internally?
So I want to caveat that the Harry Rosen story is a bit unique because of this COVID character in the story, which does play a major role. So fleshing out the business case, working with the executive to get buy-in was a little unusual in the sense we were kind of forced, like the business was literally shuttered. And so to make these promises, you didn't have to really make as strong of a case because with the in-store channel effectively closed for like 250 days over a 2-year period, the e-com channel became the lifeblood of the business. So the necessity was there. The business case could be a bit softer, a bit weaker, because we just had to like keep the cash register open effectively. So I can give you a better answer based on different businesses I've worked on, but the Harry Rosen case is a little bit unique. It's not so straightforward in that case.
No, that is really very cool. I didn't know that, but that makes a lot of sense. And that actually explains probably why a lot of people that sold to retailers exploded during COVID. But after that, a lot of them have struggled. So maybe talk to me a bit about what was the Herringbone app? I know it was a clienteling tool. For those that are listening that don't know, if you don't live in Canada, you might not know, but Harry Rosen sells, I mean, maybe you tell it better than I do, but I shop there for high-end suits or clothing. So I'm feeling like opening up the wallet. So maybe talk to us a bit about the Herringbone app and what that is and why it was valuable, and talk us through that project.
Sure. I'm actually glad you touched on that because when I think back on my time at Harry Rosen, the Herringbone app is one of the two things I'm most proudest of because that really lit me up in terms of doing something really differentiated after the big website launch, of course. So to give you a bit of context, with Harry Rosen, the client advisor, like the selling advisor, they call them clothing advisors, the client advisor relationship is really important. That's like part of the DNA of the business or how they do business differently. And implicit in that client advisor relationship is a lot of trust. The business learned over time that men, at least the men who shop there, really don't need to be given a whole plethora of choice. Coming into that store, it's a bit intimidating. There's just like so much stuff. not to talk about how it's merchandised, but there's so much selection. And so the advisor is trained at figuring out what you, Kaylin, gravitate towards. Like, what's your size preference? What's your style preference? Do you need to dress up for like important pitches or for your daughter's graduation or whatever the case may be? That's their job. They kind of take that profile of you and figure out what's best for you. So when a client comes into a store, it's appointment driven, and the advisor will typically have constructed what they call a laydown. So they'll figure out, okay, these are like 2 jackets that you might need and 3 dress shirts and like 2 pairs of like nice denim and 3 shoes. And you would just basically put together like a couple outfits based on that alone, like literally an assembly laid on a tabletop. And so Herringbone, the big unlock there was, how do we allow advisors to actually do that, create that magic curated experience digitally? Because really, in today's day and age, why should that relationship have to be tethered to the in-store experience? Couldn't it just happen when you're on your couch at night and the advisor is on his couch at night in different houses, but you're still working on that relationship, you're enriching that relationship, you're still co-shopping together? And so we basically had this internal application also built on the same mock stack that was powering the website, but it was like the corollary of the website. Everything that you were doing, all your loyalty history and what's in your cart and your purchase history and your wish list, all that stuff is exposed to the advisor, who can then say, oh, you like that thing? Cool. Let me dress it up for you. Let me put something together. And all you have to do is like hit add to cart, checkout. So for us, that was a really special omni-channel experience, realizing that this application could humanize the digital experience, but also digitize the in-store experience, right? Like you could literally be like back and forth on the app in store, but there's that trust factor. There's the fact that like my advisor is looking out for me, even though I'm shopping on my couch online late at night.
No, I love that. And to transition into talking a bit of like tech debt, making sure executive alignment in the business, you guys were on a monolith, you had a bunch of tech debt, everything were kind of built from a dependency standpoint. So it was really hard to like iterate and ship code. Maybe talk to us a bit about like some of the fundamentals you put in place to ensure that tech debt didn't start to accrue now that you had kind of flipped it over. And how'd you balance that when I'm assuming online sales were effectively going through an exponential growth period? Because like you mentioned, the main cash registers were closed. So yeah, maybe talk to us a bit about, first and foremost, like how'd you launch and ensure that you don't accrue tech debt at the beginning, and then how you kind of balance that with iterating quickly and moving forward.
It's a very good question, actually, because I believe that just because a business might be sitting on a monolithic or a legacy or some tech stack that the business is not being served well by, it doesn't mean that you still can't severely mess up tech stack of shiny new tools. And so that was a bit of a battle scar I took with me from that monolithic period forward, which is to say, there's no way that, especially under the pressure of time, like under the pressure of us having to launch this new MACH-powered website so quickly, there's no way that our first moves with that tech stack is going to be the best move. So we had to account for, literally budget for, a certain amount of developer person hours or tickets through the queue to continually look back and clean up that tech debt as we were moving forward. So I didn't want the mock stack to become as prohibitive for the business as the monolith was. So some of the practical ways I would do to kind of govern that is, number one, we had a contest with the development team, which was very helpful. We gave it a cute name of See Something, Say Something, which is to say, if you want to find the tech debt in your stack, I mean, I'm not going through the repo. That's not my business anymore. The developers know where all the skeletons in the closet are. Ask them to document it. So we literally created an award to say, over this short time period, like 1 or 2 weeks, whatever it was, whoever documents the most tickets that were categorized with a custom category of debt, that person gets some like obscene cash reward. We really wanted them to like do the work to make it happen. And the value of that is like, we would get an outsized return. But of course, there's still trade-offs. That's cool for the development team. But when you're actually presenting to the executive weekly to say, here's actually how we've allocated money for the development team across work items like features or risks, stuff like that. We also categorize tech debts and would report on that weekly to say we've budgeted that harmonized over a long period, say 1 year. When you count up all work items, 25% of them should always be tech debt on a continual basis. And essentially, I wanted to be set up where I was being accountable to myself, but also to the business to say, we will be good stewards of the initial investment you made, like of that huge CapEx spike at the beginning. We're going to take care of this forevermore. And then because you're talking to the business, obviously you can't prioritize every tech debt ticket. So going back to that contest, when a tech debt ticket was written up, we would always ask in the developer's experience to grade its severity, its frequency, and impact over time. So at least we know that we were picking the most prioritized debt tickets over others.
I love that. I feel like that's something that candidly people don't really spend too much time on, because in a lot of cases, it's not directly correlated in the short term to that extra campaign or conversion, but in the long term becomes like a weighted vest when you're trying to swim across the lake.
Yeah, no doubt. It's kind of like you have to take your car to the mechanic every once in a while to do like oil changes. It's just like the regular maintenance. If you think of it as like something you have to do, then it's not just like, oh, we'll get to that someday.
Absolutely. So yeah, as we look to wrap up, maybe talk to us a bit about with your new venture, what you're hoping to accomplish, what's kind of top of mind for you, where do you think you can drive the most amount of value?
I'm being Captain Obvious here, but the agency model is a little bit stressed. It's a little bit under duress, especially because of AI. I had to throw that in there. It's surprised we waited until this far into the conversation to mention that. But it's possible if you have very good judgment and if you can establish trust, and if you've got enough reps of doing transformation-oriented work, not to say a whole program necessarily, but swapping out a commerce platform or a CMS or marketing activation programs, those smaller things that fit into the larger transformation bucket, there is pattern recognition to it. And I think digital transformation itself has a bit of a bad rap because there's so much association to failure. And there isn't enough of a recipe that's out there. So I believe that there's a way to do this kind of work to give businesses value faster upstream from when development starts. So essentially figuring out how to best serve the business, how to orient the business with a good operating model where business and tech are joint partners of these investments and really driving value. Figuring out all that upstream work before implementation starts for anything is something that should be accelerated. And I don't think anybody's really focusing on that enough. So that's where I see a bit of a market gap that I think I'm well positioned to satisfy. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, Tovi, it was amazing learning about your journey, and congrats on the launch of the new venture, and really appreciate your time today. Fantastic podcast.
Thank you, Kalen.
The e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the e-commerce toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.